So, is God of War really the best game of this generation like critics are making it out to be? Well, let's find out. The game wastes no time throwing you right into the action. You play as Kratos, who embarks on a journey with his young son Atreus to spread his recently deceased wife's ashes on the highest peak of the highest mountain in all of the realms. You become immediately keen to the relationship between the two. Kratos is reluctant to even let Atreus come with him on the journey, as he doesn't believe he's ready, while Atreus is determined to prove otherwise. That's really the entire premise. There's no filler. No need to get sidetracked, which is good. Why waste time when you can just get right to it? The relationship between the two completely dominates the narrative. Kratos is a hard-ass, no-nonsense warrior immune to the dark side of war, while Atreus is free-spirited, playful, and always willing to help others. Kratos is powerful, unmerciful, and has never met an enemy he cannot conquer, while Atreus is more of an intellectual. Despite his age, he's able to read mystic languages, which proves to be just as helpful an attribute on their journey. The two are so different that they clash constantly throughout the game. But it's the tender moments they share that really defines the experience. One of the more emotional scenes being where Atreus kills his prey for the first time. You get to watch this boy become a man, but at the same time, some of Atreus' more noble qualities begin to rub off on his father. Let me just say that these are two of the most fleshed out and well-written characters in a game, maybe that I've ever seen, and I enjoyed every bit of their dialogue, both between themselves and with other characters. Speaking of which, the two come across several characters along the way, like the mysterious but helpful witch, Freya, the crass and vulgar blacksmith, Brock, and his more meek but noble brother, Sindri, Mimir, an actual talking head, well-versed in ancient lore that aids the two throughout their mission, and the powerful, unfeeling, and ruthless villain, Baldur, who will stop at nothing to kill them both. All of the characters in the game are well-written with unique personalities that make them distinguishable and memorable, and the dialogue sounds about as good as it could be. The voice acting, too, is superb. From top to bottom, every character is extremely well acted. I mentioned the premise is very simple, reach the mountain, but it is so well executed. Instead of inserting some padded levels to increase the runtime, they focus on what's most important and refine it to a T, which is how it should be. And there are some interesting twists that I didn't see coming, but nothing too outlandish to distract me from the main plot. And even though there are some instances of downtime, I have to say the story is one of the best in a game that I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing.
Watch. Wow.
What did you write?
I asked them to watch over Mother. Do you think they'll watch over us on the way to the top?
Come, boy. It is a long way up.
My only gripe with it is that in these interactive stories, it can be hard to tell when you're actually in control of your character, like when the game leads into a cutscene. It can be a little hands-off at times. Another thing I have to say is that the game is a technical masterpiece. Aside from being completely, and I do mean 100% free of bugs, glitches, crashes, or frame rate drop, visually speaking, the game is absolutely beautiful. Each place you traverse through is vibrant with color, and every single section of the environment has been meticulously crafted with so much detail. Nothing is short of texture. The game features some of the absolute best lighting effects I think I've ever seen, and the dynamic animations within, like the wind and water, look breathtaking. From a stylistic standpoint, the entire game is shot in one continuous take. There are no loading screens at all, except when you're respawning from death, of course, and I found it so refreshing to be fully immersed with this style. The character models are some of the best of this generation, the faces and facial animations in particular. The lip syncing is quite possibly the best I've ever seen, and the physical features are all finely textured, with the lone exception being some of the hair, Freya's specifically. But other than that, the visuals in this game are near perfect. I found the score really good too, except I was disappointed during some of the more emotional scenes. It seemed to me like those cues didn't always fit the moment, but that's the only negative I have. There's always an epic piece of music during combat, adding to this anxious and frantic atmosphere.
I'm ready!
The sound design is also excellent. Every single movement and action in the game is accompanied with the appropriate sound, and they're all expertly recorded, so the clash of swords against a shield, the running through the snow, and the climbing of a cliff all sound superb. So does the gameplay match the high quality of the other aspects in the game? Well, actually, yeah, it does. My first impression of combat was rough for two reasons. The first was that I played on the second hardest difficulty, but the second was that I treated it like a hack and slash, which it's not. Well, most of the time. Combat here is different because you have to make use of defense just as much, if not more, than offense. In addition to your shield, you'll be dodging attacks frequently. If not, you're dead. And you'll almost always be taking on more than one enemy at a time. But what makes combat here unique is Atreus. Although he attacks enemies on his own, you can command him to shoot arrows which will distract enemies, giving you the chance to get the jump on them, or the distraction will save you if you're being attacked. When upgraded, his arrows can be quite powerful, and my strategy was to use him to stun enemies, which allowed me to perform stun kills, which are basically one-hit takedowns. Your Leviathan axe can also be used at range, in addition to up close, and you can use your shield to parry attacks at the last second, which leaves your enemies in a daze, giving you the chance to get it in quickly. You also have runic attacks that you can select and upgrade at your choosing depending on your liking, and these are essential for bosses, but they're practically useful everywhere. Later in the game, you acquire Kratos' old standard, the Blades of Chaos, and I absolutely loved wreaking havoc with these things. Although it can vary in specific situations, combat in the game is almost always extremely fast-paced. Not necessarily because you berserk your way through, but because there's so much going on, like the defensive aspects I mentioned before. And although, like I said, my first impression wasn't all that great, I came to really enjoy it once I got the hang of it, and I can almost guarantee anyone will be able to pick it up and enjoy it just the same. There's a wide variety of enemies, with varying attacks and methods in which they execute them. Some have unique abilities like super fast movement and resistance to your axe. Some attacks deal fire damage, some deal ice, others poison, all of which you'll have to manage before they kill you. Some attacks will impair your vision, some attacks cannot be blocked, which means evading them will be your only means of defense, and the enemy AI, at least on higher difficulties, is really smart. They'll flank your position, so you can't just set up shop with your shield expecting them to charge you all at once. Combat is challenging, so much so that there were some sections I had to drop the difficulty down. But there are some sections that are challenging even on easy, like the Valkyries, which I'll get into later. The game isn't at all a breeze, so if you fancy a challenge, you'll get one. Another cool aspect is that as you encounter enemies, helpful information including tips about how to fight them are added to your codex, giving you resources that will better aid you during your journey. There are also some truly epic boss fights, although I do have to say that some of them border on tedious, as they can have incredible amounts of health and deal moves that kill you in one hit. And I'm not gonna lie, I raged hard and nearly chucked my controller out the window during certain sections. The RPG elements kinda puzzled me at first. They didn't really seem all that well executed. Like the abilities for your weapons are linear, so you can't really choose one path or another based on your playstyle. Instead, they're in a line and you unlock them in succession. But with that said, they become extremely helpful during those difficult sections I alluded to. You can also craft and upgrade your armor and weapons to your liking based on the attributes they provide. So if you favor vitality over luck, or cooldown over runic, you can choose the gear that's right for you. In addition to combat, there are other gameplay elements like some light platforming. There are environmental puzzles to solve, like areas blocked off that can be accessed by the various forms of magic you unlock. nor near chests that require you to interact with 3 seals hidden around the area, sometimes even in plain sight. Although the story is fairly linear, the game never felt like it was stuck on rails, as the level design is nearly flawless. You constantly come across forks in the road, and your exploration is rewarded when you take the beaten path and find a legendary chest or an artifact for your collection. There are many chests in the game that contain health and rage upgrades, as well as gear and runic attacks for your character build, so my love of exploration gave me the chance to upgrade quicker than I would have otherwise. The levels usually have many layers to them, and most of those layers are sealed off, so you must think of a way to get through. The game does this great job of making you feel really smart once you figure out how to solve one of these problems, and I have to praise it for its ability to guide you along without holding your hand. The best example I can think of is in Alfheim. You come across those branches blocking the way, and without being told to do so, you're supposed to throw your axe at their weak spot to get through. But then you come across sections with multiple branches, and I intuitively lined them up and threw the axe through all of them at once to get through. Now I know it's not rocket science, but it was still rewarding to figure that out on my own. The levels are filled with these types of environmental puzzles that you must quickly learn how to solve. Aside from what I mentioned so far, there's still a ton of stuff to do. There are collectibles scattered all around, from Jotnar's shrines that Atreus will read, Odin's ravens serving as spies which you can destroy, and different families of artifacts you can discover and turn them in for money. There are dragons held in captivity which you can release from their bondage. There are realm tears, with most leading to these intense fights. There are side quests in the form of favors you can complete for Brock and Sindri, as well as wayward spirits struggling to find their way into the afterlife, which are all fairly interesting. There are these boss-type enemies just walking around that you can fight. There is so much value here, it's not even funny. I'm not even close to being finished. There are 8 Valkyries around the world you can fight, some of the most challenging bosses you can face, even on easy difficulty. Some of them made more challenging by the fact that you fight them in these incredibly close spaces. And once you beat all 8, you get to fight the Valkyrie Queen, who is a fucking nightmare, and took me like 736 tries to beat her, and I raged in victory when I finally took her down. And there are other realms you can access too. During your exploration, you can find language ciphers for Atreus to learn, unlocking these realms, going back to my point about the game rewarding explorers. And these have their own unique features, like the Muspelheim trials. These sections where you have to complete certain challenges like kill 100 enemies on 1 life, or all enemies' health immediately replenishes after taking damage. There's Helheim, which is filled with spirits crossing over, and then there's Niflheim, which contains one of the cooler sections, this randomly generated labyrinth where you only have a certain amount of time to advance through and open these chests before you die from poison inhalation. I cannot stress enough that the game is brimming with content, and there's no filler. It's all of insanely high quality. I'm usually very hard to please, but I have to say this game got to me. It took a little longer than maybe most players, but not only did it grow on me, it captivated me. There's no denying how extremely well made it is. Every single aspect is of the highest quality. Now there were some slower and less interactive sections, some tedious combat, and some frustrating moments, but these were few and far between, and I have to give it praise for telling a compelling story without any fluff, and doing an excellent job of immersing me into its narrative. The gameplay is really good, both combat and the exploration elements throughout the environments, and there is so much great content that even if this thing would have been priced at $70, it would be worth your buy. So it's that time. Is God of War truly a masterpiece that will change gaming forever? No, I don't think so. But what it will do is set the bar sky high, and I will definitely be comparing every successive game I played to it, to see if it measures up. So my final score for God of War is a 9 out of 10. It is a must-own if you have a PS4, and if you are waiting for a game to come along that makes your purchase of one worthy, this is definitely it. And I also have to say how refreshing it is to get a game in 2018 that's solely single-player driven, with no microtransactions. If single players start coming back into the AAA fold, this will be the game that does it. Well, let me know in the comments what you think of God of War and what you thought of this video. And as always, thanks for watching.
Close your heart to it. me.